What's that you cut out?
Ideally, I want to keep this under like 2 hours.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Like I think I got maybe a dozen games on here of varying quality. So, and I don't know if I'll be doing a proper bottom five or even a proper top five. Heck, my goatee is, there's still some contenders, but
I think
there's one that stands out.
I think we'll have more arguments in the top half than the bottom half, mostly because you didn't play any of the games in the bottom.
No, I try to stay away from the bottom, if you know what I mean.
No, I don't know what you mean. That doesn't make sense.
The bottom feeder games, Loki. Come on.
Oh, yes. I bet. This is the internet's worst gaming podcast after a very, very long hiatus. Stizzy, hi, how are you?
I'm good. It never feels as long as it is, but then you look at the calendar and you realize, has it been that long?
Well, because we talk to each other every week.
Very true, we do. And we tried to stream last time we did a official show, and that was kind of a disaster. So
it was a half good show. Out of an hour, half of it was my audio didn't exist.
Yeah, you could hear mine throughout the whole thing, but only half of yours. So, yeah, half or maybe a 3/4. I don't know how the math works, but decided to go with the old tried and true Audacity and Skype.
Let's see how that worked out. Because while I didn't have to worry about sound issues the last time, I definitely do now. Apologies for any background noise. This is the internet's worst. I named it that for a reason. This is our end of year show, the best and worst games of 2024. I'll just say overall, I think it was a terrible year for games. Just like absolutely piss miserable.
I'd agree with that. There were some standouts, both good and bad. But overall, I don't think it's going to be remembered, as a very strong year.
So I say we start there. Let's start at the absolute worst. Because usually we go like, this game was okay, and they get to the worst. And then let's start at the fucking dead-ass last bottom. I said this on Twitter. I'm going to say it again here. The worst game I played all of 2024 was Banisher's Ghost of New Eden. And it's not from a technical perspective, because when you actually play the game, it runs fine, The combat of punching ghosts in the face and axing ghost dogs, it all works fine. It's the story that really pissed me off about it. You play as a Ghostbuster in the 1600s America, which means colonial days, pre-British Empire. Well, British, whatever. There aren't that many Brits in the game anyways. And you're in the Massachusetts Bay Area. But one of the characters you play as is a black lady. And, oh no, I don't know if you know about this, Stizzy, but in colonial America, black people weren't, like, citizens?
No, I have heard that in my history lessons.
So, almost everywhere you go, this lady is like, hey, you're a black lady. We need to point this out. It's very important that we point this out. Also, I forgot to mention this. The opening screen has one of those content warning things. It's like, there's some stuff in this game that we don't condone, but we wanted to show, historical accuracy. It's like, it's a game about fucking punching ghosts. You're a Ghostbuster. You banish ghosts. That's what it's called. Banishers.
It is it is funny that they would put a warning like that in a game that it's obvious that they tailor and made it around such a sensitive topic and a hard time for a certain group of people. It's just let the work speak for itself. Is what I'd say.
The first case you come across is with a gay ghost. You meet, I believe, 3 gay ghosts throughout the game. I didn't finish it. And then like 2 gay living people. And basically the villains in the game are mostly white men. There are occasionally white women that do bad things. But the part I really just fucking gave up on is you're doing an investigation for a Native American ghost, an American Indian ghost, excuse me. And they're like, oh, this entire camp of whatever white settlers poisoned my tribe with these smallpox blankets. And I'm like, can I play a video game? Am I allowed to have fun? Are you just gonna like beat me over the head with this history lesson of white people are bad in the 1600s? I fucking know. I went to school. I read the books. I'm aware of how bad things were. This is a video game about punching ghosts.
I remember when I first saw that game, I was sort of intrigued because it was a new IP and it wasn't a remake or a sequel by an established studio that it's changed drastically. So I thought, oh, okay, well, we'll see how it goes. But then the more and more news I heard about it, the worse it sounded. And then when you were telling me about your experience, I thought, man, that's just another one for the ash heap.
It was made and published by Don't Nod, and it sold so badly they had to let 70 of their staff go. So take that.
By sheer numbers, that's actually pretty low, but probably given the size of their studio, I'm sure that was pretty a sizable amount. And it's not really a game that's been talked about among the biggest disappointments of the year, and I wonder maybe if it is because it was a brand new original IP, and by Don't Nod is a well-known studio, but I wouldn't say they're not a marquee studio in the industry by any means.
They had one major hit in Life is Strange, and then split off a couple branches, and then Deck 9 took over that franchise, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, I was the only one ever talking about this game. Nobody else had ever heard of it. And for good. I'm glad less people played it. Because it's just race-baiting nonsense. It's feel bad for being white. And the whole gag of it is like, oh, it's your girlfriend. So it becomes a ghost, the black lady. So you can, in fact, bring her back to life by the end of the game. But to do that, you have to condemn the souls of the living. And it's like, well, this is an obvious fucking trap. Because it's like, oh, you're going to become an evil dick to bring your girlfriend back to life. It's like, or you learn the real lesson of letting her go. It's like, fuck off.
You can definitely, as a developer, make a game that tackles sensitive issues like that and also make it entertaining to play. Because at the end of the day, like you said, it is a game, and you got to make the gamer actually want to keep playing it. Otherwise, they're going to bomb it online and say, this is shit, don't play it.
What was the worst thing you played?
I wouldn't say I played any real terrible games, because the thing about this day and
age, you value
Loki,
your time more than me, yes.
Well, and it's a lot easier to tell these days. I'm not saying I'm some sort of gaming Nostradamus or anything, but there are so many obvious red flags when it comes to a pre-release of a game, and there were a few others that we'll discuss later on. But I would say the most disappointing, I would say probably Iodine Chronicles 100 Heroes. That's not to say I hated the game. I enjoyed parts of it, but it was a game, I think it was made by a new studio. I believe it's called Bear and Cat or something like that. Something animals. But anyway, it was founded by one of the lead devs of the Suikoden RPG, the Japanese RPG games, the first two specifically, and they're some of my favorite RPGs of all time, especially the second one. Absolutely love that game. And it was done, this game was as a spiritual successor of those two games, both graphic style and combat style and whatnot. It even has you building a castle, a base, and recruiting a ton of heroes, hence 100 Heroes in the name. But I just didn't think it lived up to the Suikoden games, because those were timeless classics. They got excellent stories, amazing characters, a lot of twists and turns. The second one, like I said, especially stands out among my all-time favorite games. But Iodine Chronicles, when I was done with it, I struggled to remember half the characters were recruited, and the main characters, the big three, only two of them get any sort of serious screen time or development. In the third one, I don't know why they were promoting her as a main character, because she's essentially a secondary character. Even she
the one on the cover?
Yeah, it's the black gal in green with the staff, and yeah, she's, a nice enough character. She cares about her home, the forest, and she wants to protect her people, and very good motivations, but that's about as far as it evolves. And then she just joins the army, and one of the other guys is the actual main character of the story, and she just kind of gets, lost among the weeds, and I wouldn't say it was deceptive marketing, but it was definitely misleading, kind of painting the three protagonists and having it sort of being like all three of them have really major roles in the overarching story, and that they come together at the end to battle a greater evil, which happens, but like I said, one of them is the actual main character, the dark-headed guy, and his story gets the main focus. So, and the story itself was sort of lackluster and even kind of derivative at times. There was a lot of story beats that were very similar to the Suikoden games, and which I thought is nice, but it's not as good as the original. It doesn't capture the same sort of magic those games did, but this was a crowdfunded game, and it was really nice to see its progression. I never invested it in myself because I'm always kind of skeptical about those kind of projects. I always feel like they're never going to lead to anywhere, but I was pleasantly surprised to see that this one did. And like I said, it was okay, but it was still a kind of a disappointment, really. And if they do make a sequel, I hope they can improve on what they've done, or maybe move on to another project. That might be best. So,
another thing about 2024 is it's a showcase of stuff that used to be great that sucks now, for various reasons. You might see a pattern emerge among the stuff I really dislike this year. Speaking of once greatness, another pretty bad game. It's not like horrendous like Banishers was, and didn't piss me off, but it would definitely piss you off. Dragon Age The Veilguard. You've heard a lot about this game on the internet, and everything they tell you is true. It is appallingly badly written. It shits on the lore of the previous games. It shits on the lore of its own universe. It retcons all of the gods of the universe. Think about that. Retconning God. The characters, I say maybe 3 of them are actual characters with like motivations and fears and goals, and the rest are just like broad brush caricatures who don't have personalities except to be there and be snarky. They dumb down the old RPG. It's barely an RPG. It is mostly an action game. You mash buttons and things die. It's so like... I don't know how to describe this, Stizzy. It's like fake. You know what I mean? Have you ever... You're playing a video game. Shit, let's go to Inquisition. You're playing Dragon Age Inquisition, and you're having a conversation in Skyhold with Cole, the ghost boy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're thinking about stuff, and you're responding back to him with the Inquisitor, and he has a narrative. He's not like the most important character in the story, but he has his own goals. He has his own aspirations. He has his own fears. The characters in Veilguard barely have anything. It's all surface level shit. And that's all encapsulated by Tosh, the Canary chick, who talks like she's from 2024 California. She does not sound at all like a professional voice actress. I don't know who does her voice. She sucked at her job. Her character is horrendous. They put all of their incredibly stupid modern ideals into that character and this game. It's such a 2024 game when it should have been a game for the ages, not just Dragon Age. It's bland. It's like the nicest compliment I can give it. It's competent. I had no, like glitches or errors or anything, but I only liked 3 characters in the whole game, and everyone else I felt could go to hell. It didn't do nothing for me. They put all this like saccharine shit stuff and stuff happened towards the end of the game, and you're supposed to feel real sad. It's like, fucking why? I don't know any of you. None of you are people. You're just cartoons. Anyways, it's a bad game. It also sold very badly.
That's the one saving grace. And as you well know, Loki, and as I've talked about on this show before, I'm a huge fan of the Dragon Age series. In fact, that's probably an understatement. I absolutely adore the Dragon Age world. It's one of my favorite high fantasy / dark fantasy worlds. And a big reason why is just, forgetting the phenomenal characters and the fantastic story and just the rich lore that has been expanded upon with each entry up until Inquisition, is how visceral and how dark the world is. But at the end, a hero can rise and can vanquish a giant evil. And but if you wanted to, because those old games were role-playing games, you could be whatever you wanted to be. You could be the hero who was nice to everybody and the paragon of virtue, or you could just be the absolute asshat who screws over everybody he meets and insults everybody and everyone's culture. And it was great. That's what role-playing was. But in this game, everything I heard of, and you confirm this, is that you are pretty much railroaded in how you can respond to people. And the most negative you can be as your main character is slightly critical, if that's even the case. And it really ties your hand, and it doesn't even feel like it didn't even seem like a role-playing game.
The game plays it safe. There's literally a mode where you can't die. Your companions can't be hurt. They can't be targeted. They reduced the party size from 3 to 2.
Journalist mode.
You can't be a dick. Like, even the villain, Solus, who, when this game was originally launched or announced over a decade ago, it's called the Dreadwolf, because we're finally going to get revenge on that bald fucker, Solus. And this game is a Solus apology game. Like, the person who wrote it, that guy, Corey, whatever his name is, it's like totally in love with Solus, because the game is obsessed with retconning his backstory and fixing him as like, oh, actually, Solus had the right idea all along. So you get one of 2 endings, really, which is you force Solus to go back to guard the Veil because you killed the other elven gods, or Solus willingly goes back to guard the Veil because you brought back his dead girlfriend, Moranthos, or whatever her name is.
I heard from a lot of people online and YouTubers saying, this game's terrible, the characters are awful, I don't care about anything or anyone. But the last 2 hours are pretty good, and I'm thinking, that's impossible. I mean, that's just from what they told me beforehand. If you don't care about anything and anyone, like when you were playing, you said you didn't, there's no reason to give a shit about anybody, and there would be no emotional weight or impact at the end of the story for it to make any sort of lasting impression.
There's a choice. This will wrap up on this piece of shit. There's a choice towards the end of the game that you don't know will kill one of your characters. They try to copy paste Mass Effect 1. The problem is they tell you who is going to be ahead of time, which is to say it's Davrin, the black elf, by the way, who's not special. There are 100 black elves in that game, and Chinese elves, and all other kinds of elves, because everything's fucking homogenous everywhere. And Lace Harding, who was in Inquisition. So do you want the new guy who has no fucking personality? Do you want to sacrifice him, or the elf or the dwarf girl that you kind of know, sort of, who's also not really a character? It's like, no, well, yeah, the elf guy's gonna die. Oh no, he died. Damn. Well, gotta finish the next 2 hours of the game, I guess.
I definitely would probably pick the elf guy, that's for sure. Harding is nice, but she was a nice character in Inquisition, but like you said, she doesn't really have much development in it, and this game could have taken that opportunity to do so, but I could talk about, honestly, I could talk about what I hated about this game, and I didn't even play it. I didn't want to play it.
No, you shouldn't.
I could see the warning signs from way off.
I'll tell you what they do with Harding in Veilguard. They make her an allegory for Indians.
Which makes no sense since she's a dwarf and they live underground.
The Titans were the first people of Thetis, you see. And lyrium is actually the blood of Titans.
Yeah. They kind of hinted that in the DLC Inquisition, but...
yes, it did.
Yeah, it seemed like everything just sort of tied back to the elves, which I hated too.
Again, it sold very badly. People are probably going to lose their jobs. And I'm okay with that because a lot of people who used to work at BioWare who made games we love don't work there anymore. And they let absolute morons write and design their games and be terrified so much of like the bullshit line of representation, but also be scared of actually, taking a single risk. This is one of the safest fucking games I've ever played. Not just because of the gameplay, by the way. I haven't said anything about the gameplay hardly because it's not worth talking about.
They made it, just more generic and action.
Yes.
Action-y and faster pace, and it looks like something a Sony first-party developer would make. Third-person over-the-shoulder game, but
so is it finally time to talk about the real worst game of the year, Concord? We got to give a special shout out to our boys and girls and whatever's at Concord.
Yeah, if I had a pick of least favorite game this year that I didn't play, I would pick Veilguard, but Concord needs to have a place there. It is, oh boy.
We're going to have, from now on, the annual Concord Award for Worst Idea of the Year.
Dude, there's going to be anniversary celebrations like when it came out from year on, and I'm looking forward to it. The memes were fantastic.
It's one of those things every gamer could see, what? No, culture war, blah, 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 woke, blah, blah, blah. If you look at the game, what you're looking at is a first-person Overwatch clone with the ugliest fucking characters you've ever seen. There was one good-looking chick, that one with the dark hair. Everyone else was a hideous alien. And if they were human, they didn't look human. And they charged $40 for what should have been a free-to-play game. And nobody fucking bought it. And they shut it down within a week. It was like 8 days or something, right? And it was 8 years in development. It cost hundreds of millions of dollars. It just flushed it down the toilet by fucking Sony. And I'm not kidding, like the biggest failure and the biggest gaming embarrassment of all time. E.T. on the Atari doesn't come close to this because of inflation.
Unless we find out that 20 years from now, someone went out in the Arizona desert and buried a bunch of copies of Concord, then yeah, I don't think even E.T. will suffer this kind of embarrassment, because I don't think games like E.T. and Superman and historically really bad games of the past, there's always, and this just might be as time goes on and people look back and look more fondly on it, there's a little level of endearment around those kind of games where I don't think anything like that is going to be the case for Concord, just because of everything that went into development and how much it cost and how much time it took. And not only that, but just, the fact that gamers were being gaslit by not just the developers themselves, but journalists too, saying there's nothing wrong with these designs. If you don't like them, you're just bigots. And anybody with eyes could just look at it and say, I don't want to play as a character, that looks like a giant elephant and looks like the trans flag flew up all over it or something. It was dead on arrival, or dead before arrival, actually.
It was dead before arrival, yeah. That's the better one.
It had no chance.
But it is very funny. I think this is like the funniest failure also of all time. It's just like there's not enough bad things you can say about it. And it's all down to Sony. Sony is like, we're going to put hundreds of millions of dollars into this thing. We're gambling so much on it. And they lost big time. So now they're, what the fuck can they do? Oh, Astrobot won Game of the Year at the Jeff Awards. That makes up for it, I guess.
Yeah, funnily enough, it was developed by a Japanese studio, which Sony has been systematically closing down more and more as they feel that, no, the future is actually in California, and that's where all the best developers and the best games and ideas are going to be coming out of. And, oh, look, the Japanese studio made a fun little, cute little platformer with a, cutesy little robot, and it saved the, saved the year, but they saved a little face.
I just don't want to give... I want to put everything on the hideous designs, and I don't want to give any precedence to it failed because it's live service. It's like, no, fuckers. It's failed because you made it ugly. Charge $40 to get them to play ugly characters.
If they had spent a year, maybe two, and, I don't know, maybe $50 million, and it was a free-to-play game and released with the same characters, it wouldn't still do well, but it wouldn't be nearly the embarrassment it was for them. Mm-hmm. People have just been like, oh yeah, this isn't very good. Characters are ugly. Gameplay's blah. It's just whatever. And Sony could have survived that. Been like, oh well, back to the drawing board. But they invested so much into it that there's maybe more conspiracy theories talk here. But there are people saying that Sony is enacting a tax throughout their other business ventures as well. Which very well may be the case.
Yeah, the Concord tax, I've heard about that. I don't think so, but maybe. Because what really happened, the big Sony story was that, and also Jim Ryan leaving, and Herman Hulst, that Japanese guy, taking over. And so far, they've really sucked at their job. Like, you've heard me rant and rave about Jim Ryan forever, and about the guy before him, too. Sean Layden. But Herman Hulst is not off to a good start, having lost already hundreds of millions in bad ideas. Herman Hulst said, Concord is a great game, people will love it.
Yeah, talk about a lasting... what a send-off for Jim Ryan for Concord.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Like, I don't remember if we talked about it on this show, but we've definitely, you and I have mentioned it. Like, Jim Ryan hit the 12-game initiative. He's like, we want to put 12 live service games on the Sony. This isn't the end of them, by the way, because they've also got Fair Games coming up. Remember Fair Games? Oh, they also invested a shitload in Bungie. Hey, you remember Destiny 2?
Oh, barely. That's losing players.
Yes, it's also tanking slowly. They spent $2 billion for that. I don't think they spent as much for Concord, but I say $200 is too much. Anyways, enough of that piece of shit. What else you got? The bad.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just going to say Sony's definitely going to be feeling the repercussions for that.
Yes.
Regardless of whether they were enacting a Concord tax, and they keep doubling down on the live service games. So yeah, I'm sure that'll go.
Speaking of live service games that were run by incompetent studios, Suicide Squad killed the Justice League. Now, a major disclaimer: I just, as of this recording last night, 100%ed this game. I really liked playing it. I 100% understand why this failed. They're going to shut it. They're going to take it offline in a couple of months. Luckily, they put an offline mode into it. It's on PS Plus free this month. I have fucking no idea why. Some last-second boosted numbers. This one was also partly about design, and also I will give credence more to the live service aspect of this. The whole... What I don't want to give credence to is the stuff that was coming out before, because a bunch of shit about Suicide Squad leaked before the game came out, including cutscenes where Harley kills Batman and all this stuff, and then Kevin Conroy passed away, and it's like, oh, we're disrespecting all these heroes, and it's like, that's the point of the game, and I don't think that was that big a deal. But when people are using that to argue against the game, why they don't want to play it, okay, fine. It's not like you're missing out on much. I liked it. I'm not going to say this is a game everybody should play.
When they first announced it, and they came with the subtitle "Kill the Justice League," I thought, okay, that's just marketing. That's like a catchy name for the game, because this Suicide Squad is no match for the Justice League. Even a mind-controlled Justice League, they're no match for. But that wasn't the case for this game. They actually, for some reason, are able to take out the Justice League one by one.
I'll tell you how. You put a bunch of bullets in them. Oh, it does also cheat.
Why didn't the Joker ever think of that?
Well, the Joker is part of the team in the DLC. the problem, this game, we talked about this so much off air, Sis, but it cheats, right? The story cheats. The same as Arkham Knight said, no, it's not Jason Todd. Yes, it is. This game says, no, this is a sequel to Arkham Knight. Having 100% of the game, I'm telling you, they're fucking lying. Because it can't be based on all the stuff that's in the game. And the DLC that says, oh, actually, our new mission is to save the Justice League. Because this was an Elseworld story all along, like I suspected. So you didn't really kill the real Batman. You didn't kill the real Superman, which is horseshit. You can't do that. You can't just say, oh, none of that stuff counted. Don't worry about it. It's like, well, then why the fuck did you do it in the first place?
Definitely sounds like a case of them trying to backtrack. And
yes,
if Rocksteady has definitely been known to lie in the past, as the example you brought up with Jason Todd and the Arkham Knight. And I know I think even in the demo or the beta last year before the game came out, you could play through I think it was a Batman museum or something, and it went over all the events of the Arkham games. Yes. And so that was the biggest indicator that it could possibly be tied to the Arkhamverse, or at least an Elseworld that, the Arkhamverse events, were, very close to what happened in the games we played, but it was just, say what you will about the story. I remember playing the beta thinking it was sensory overload for me. It was just, I'm me, Loki, I prefer a more sleek and clean UI. I don't like too much stimuli on the screen. They're really bad, but they're getting better because they have dynamic UI elements too. You can turn things on and off and what have you. And I don't know if that's the case with Suicide Squad. Can't remember.
No.
So, and there's just numbers popping off the screen. Everything's some shade of purple and neon, and you got Harley Quinn just flipping over overpasses and just all of this other garbage, and it's like, yeah.
If my biggest negative is the grindiness, because this won't come as a surprise to you, having played MMOs, right? So to 100% the game, I needed 3 pieces of gear. These pieces of gear are tied to a fucking RNG, which means I had to do the same goddamn mission over and over again until I got it.
But dude, there was grinding in the beta, and I thought, what a terrible first step forward for your game is to have a fucking grind fest in the beta. Are you kidding me?
But that's how they thought live service. That's what studios who don't know what the fuck they're doing thinks that's what it is. It's just keep it going, right? Extend the gameplay. How? I don't know. Extend it. Just have them do the same shit over and over and over again. That's fun, right?
And that's eventually what the end game just devolves into. Is just repetitive. Go here, collect this material. Go over there, collect more material, and then
they had, by the way,
schematic.
They had, by the way, 12 seasons planned based on how many Brainiacs you're supposed to kill. They only got through 4.
That was ambitious.
4 DLC. Yeah, 4 DLC characters. They just released Deathstroke. They just released Deathstroke, and then in that same time announced, we're gonna go ahead and shut this bitch down. We're not getting those other 8 Brainiacs or any other DLC characters. This is over. They had an offline mode, which is nice, so you can install and play offline. And again, if you're on PS Plus, you already get it this month. But it's a grind fest, man.
Yeah, and that was another inconsistency when it came to their assertions that it was tied to the Arkhamverse. Is Deadshot's a different color, but he's supposedly the same Deadshot from the Arkham games. Like, come on, guys. I mean, give gamers a little credit.
Warner Brothers continues to be America's dumbest company. This Suicide Squad lost them a shit ton of money. Not as much as Multiverses, actually, but really, really bad. So Rocksteady have been allegedly ordered to go back to the Batman Arkham series. And I'm like, how? You killed him in-universe and the voice actor died. Apparently they made a very good VR game, but who gives a shit?
Boy, I wish that would have been an actual third-person game. That'd been great, like the other Arkham games.
Any other bad games, or can we move on to actual, we're going to move on to some mixed mixed games.
I know those are definitely the top contenders, or bottom contenders, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
There are, I know there's some others, but I'm having a hard time blanking on them because I didn't play a lot of them just because they were so clearly gonna suck. But they may come to me as we talk more. But yeah, we get into the good stuff now.
I think a good launching point is like Rise of the Ronin. I don't remember if we had an opportunity to talk on air about this. Rise of the Ronin, I also 100%ed it last week. And it's very, very good. But it's about 10 hours, would you say, too long in the story. And just a fucking bloated open world, maps full of just busy work.
I'd say that's a good estimate. And there's a lot of characters in the game, and it's hard enough to keep track of all their names. And I'm, as much Japanese media as I consume, I still have trouble remembering Japanese names. But for a game like this,
you didn't grow up with it.
For a game like this, if it was like people were named Bob and Dale and Tom or something, I still would have trouble just because there's so many of them to keep track of, and they don't get. Obviously, they just can't get the development they can get. There were some that I thought had some pretty good arcs, but, and we were talking about this the other day, since the game is based on historical fact, there are certain events that need to take place, and for some of the characters, as you're following their plot lines along, coming to a sudden end is kind of jarring, because it's kind of a clash of the fictional liberties that the writers take when they're developing these characters, and then it just meets on, oh, that's right, they died in this battle, so sorry, they're gone now. But it's definitely it's a lot of bloat in the game too. Yeah, you're right about that.
I also think I'm trying to think of what the first game I guess technically like Diablo was the first game to really come up with this problem. But I first started noticing it in the later Borderlands games and Assassin's Creed Odyssey, where they just give you shit all the time. They're like, hey, here's a new sword. Hey, here's a new pistol. Hey, here's a new kind of sword. Hey, here's other different, because there's like 15 different kinds of fucking swords in this game. Oh, and another piece of gear. Oh, you defeated an enemy? Here's a new hat. It's like, God, stop giving me stuff. Because, one, I know 90% of the time it's going to be inferior to what I already have. So either I've got to break it down or I got to go all the way to a merchant to sell it. It's like, stop giving me junk. These are the same guys who made Neo, and that game is full of that shit. I'm just, here's more armor, here's more weapons. Just have it every time, all the time, forever. It's like, this isn't a looter shooter. You don't need to give me loot.
Oh, Rise of the Ronin takes that to the nth degree. You're right. Neo does do it. It has very, very liberal loot drops, but Rise of the Ronin, it's just, there'd be so many times where I just pick up a pack and there's, I swear, like 10 items, and the notifications would be dinging on the side of my screen. I'm just like, get tired of that shit. And the maximum number of like pieces of equipment I think you can hold is 2,000 or something. And God. I'm one of the kind of people, I try to put off selling that kind of stuff for as long as I can until it gets near the maximum. 2,000 swords and equipment and armor and stuff like that. And I think I had to go to the item shop or blacksmith and sell that shit like half a dozen times. I would say. And when you're dealing with thousands of items, that's saying something. It's nuts.
It's needlessly burdened because this was their first like quote unquote open world game, and it's not really. It's like open area game. Like you go to different areas in Japan's when Commodore Perry showed up in that era where Japan was like losing its independence to the British and the French and the Americans and all that shit. So it's a cool narrative story to take, like old-timey Japan. If you think about when the game ends, it's less than 70 years before Pearl Harbor. So they advance incredibly quickly after like the West, quote unquote, gets to Japan. But before that happens, like there are thousands of years where Japan doesn't change anything. And so from like the story that they're telling, I think is fascinating. It's not something you see much in Japanese video game media. It's just the way they decided to tell that was like, okay, so you're a samurai, you're the last samurai, right? Go kill every other samurai out there, and here, have their sword.
It's an incredibly intriguing time, like you said. You got the thousands of years of tradition clashing with the Industrial Revolution that they had there. And it's, unfortunately for this game, there is a lot of narrative whiplash as well, because the game wants you to pick a side, but it never... I can't remember exactly how I worded it when we were talking about it, months ago.
The pro shogunate, which was their old government, versus anti shogunate, which means let foreigners take over, basically.
Pretty much, and the game never really forces you to choose a side until almost the 11th hour of the game, and there's really no difference between one side or the other as far as mission structure goes, and that's prevalent in the want to say the very first mission that you can choose a side. I think you have to go to the consulate's office, and I can't remember if you're stopping you're stopping the assassin, which turns out to be your twin, which, it's part of the main character story. But there's absolutely no difference between if you go anti-shogunate or pro-shogunate, and I'm thinking, okay, well, I guess I'll just pick the side that has the most combat instructors. That's basically what my decision hinged on.
Dude, this game also suffers from you stab a guy a million times, and at the end of the fight, he's like, whew, that was a good fight. You've convinced me of your position. Well, I'll see you later.
Definitely a lot of shonen type fights where they're almost killing each other and fighting to the death, but then the last second is like, you won't get away so easily next time.
Ninja vanish.
And then you'll get to a big historical event during a mission, and you'll fight someone, and then they're just dead. And it's like, oh, that's it. Oh, well, I fought that guy 4 or 5 times, and he was all right before, but now he's gone. So, yeah. Yeah, this game felt like Team Ninja was kind of going down a checklist of what they think should be in an open world game. It's like, okay, well, we need big maps, even though there's really not a whole lot. I mean, they're nice. I mean, they're pretty historically accurate from what I can tell of, the mid 19th century Japanese cities and whatnot, and the surrounding hamlets and what have you. But there's just really, it's not like the best open world games where if you see a location, there's either some landmark that looks intriguing that you want to investigate or what have you. You're basically just going from map markers to map markers in this game, and just going to shrines or collecting cats or what have you, sort of deal. And it's just basically just like grocery shopping at that point. And graphically, this game it's not bad, but it's not great. I kind of expected a little bit better, and there's actually quite a few technical visual hiccups, especially when you're on the glider and you got a wide shot, and you can really tell that past a certain point, there's almost zero textures to the environment. And a lot of things, there's a lot of pop-in and stuff like that. And I played several months after it came out, and there were patches, and it still was, not great. But I'd say that the character models actually looked really nice. I think they did a pretty bang-up job on those. So, yeah.
That's where I put in this middle section. It's like, it's not a bad game by any means. It is just overlong and full of that checkbox open world, here's too much crap stuff. It sold, unfortunately, despite what I think about it, very badly. And so badly, in fact, the company basically said, okay, we're never doing a PS5 exclusive game again. We're going to have to release on multiple things in order to recoup our money.
It's just not worth it, I think, at this point. And I think a lot of these studios are realizing that, and Square Enix is another one. And there's just, I don't see why Sony would even want exclusive rights to it, because they didn't really, they already have Ghost of Tsushima, so they got their samurai game, and they didn't really do anything to advertise Rise of the Ronin as there's another tentpole game for them.
Well, because they had the 2 Neo games, and they're like, well, it's from the guys who made Neo. We got to keep it on the same system.
Were those exclusives?
Yes. They may be on PC, but you know how I feel about that. Neither Neo game is over on Xbox.
Yeah. I do believe they're on PC, but I don't think Rise of the Ronin is. It may eventually, to try and recoup their losses, but as we've also seen with plenty of other examples this year and past years, that doesn't always help either after the fact. Like, oh, dang, we didn't sell as well as we did on consoles. Released in PC 5 months later. Oh, it doesn't sell well there? Well.
Yeah.
Kind of miss your window.
Every game we've talked about so far has sold badly. We're going to talk about more badly selling games here in a moment. Any other honorable mentions?
I've got a few, and some of these are, I will admit, games that I started. I've played a little bit of, anywhere between like 5 or 10 hours or what have you, and just, time getting away. Some of them came out late in the year, but, or were just really, really big. Like, another big release this year was Palworld, came out earlier this year, 2024. We're in 25 now. And that had a lot of controversy around it too, and still does, since it's a lot of people say it's really similar to Pokemon, and I can see that, I can see that criticism, having played it, but it does a lot of things that I wish Pokemon did in their latest games, such as being able to arm and equip your monsters and have them do battle and kill each other for your pleasure. And it's just, at its core, it's just, you're collecting monsters, you're building the base, you're fighting battles, gaining experience, and all that. And it's a fun little game. It's something. I'm not playing it religiously or anything like that, but every once in a while I'll hop back into it and just kind of see how the farm's doing and see how all the pals are doing. But I think it's just a nice, fun, cutesy game, and it did very well, and I'm glad of that, because it's about time Pokemon and Game Freak had a competitor in this, sort of pocket monsters field, if you will.
You say that, but what Nintendo decided to do instead was lawsuit.
That seems to be their default reaction in these sort of situations, and I hate that. I think it's chicken shit of Nintendo, because I think what they're just trying to do is they're grasping at straws, and I know that they're coming at it from different avenues, but they're basically trying to say that Palworld, and I forget the studio's name that made it, but trying to say that they are in violation of certain patents. And what are the patents? Oh, throwing an item at a monster. Like, are you kidding me? Something as inane as that you can try and patent, and they're just stifling creativity and competition in the industry, and overall the gamers suffer. And I know Palworld did actually tweak some things, I think, with their capture system, in order to sort of get around the patent. So I actually haven't heard anything lately, so I don't know if the Nintendo lawyers are sort of reconnoitering and trying to come at it from a different angle of attack or what have you. But for now, as far as I know, I think Palworld still does decent numbers and people are enjoying it. So I think that's a good thing overall. So I'm looking forward to seeing the future of that.
Before you get to the next one, I was reminded by myself. I reminded myself. That doesn't make sense. Whatever. There were a couple of games that I played a tiny snippet of this year that I really wish I had put in more time, but I liked what I played. Dragon Ball Sparking Zero is up there. I think that's a very well-made game. My lack of time in it is not because of the game. It's because of, it's the same story again. It's like, how many Dragon Ball games have there been over the last 20 years that have just been the same fucking story of Goku goes to Earth, and then his brother and his cousin show up, and then we go all the way through to the big fucking pink Majin Buu stuff. It's like, could we do anything different with this universe? I know the anime does other stuff. I don't watch the anime. I play the video games.
I know the current run of the anime, I think it might be called GT or something. I haven't kept up in a while, but if I had to guess, I would say that point of the story that you're referring to is probably where Dragon Ball Z was at its peak popularity. So that's probably why they keep revisiting it.
I also put a little bit of time. This is maybe a controversial pick for some. Skull and Bones. I do really like this. I would play it so much more if I could fucking pause. This is not only a live service game, it's an always online game, it's a no pause game. So when you're sailing the seas and if you hit start or options or whatever, your boat is still going forward.
I lost my interest when I heard that, and when I heard that you also couldn't raid and board other enemy ships. I thought, okay, what kind of pirate doesn't do that? So.
No, yeah, it's not about that. It's about just like resource gathering and sinking other ships. It's not about taking over other ships. That's not what the point of the game.
Yeah, the romantic pirate life, gathering resources.
Ubisoft.
Well, we'll have like a pirate here from Yakuza.
Yes, we will.
Here in a month or so. So another game I played a little bit, but didn't invest too much time into it yet. But like you said, for Dragon Ball, not because of anything, too detracting from the game. But First Descendants is another one that I was intrigued by. Another one that had a lot of buzz around it because, in this day and age, game stands out when it actually has attractive female models, and this one certainly does. And I don't want to say lean into it, because that it's not like there's a bad game and they distract you with ass, right? If it was a bad game and they distract you with ass, it would be like one of 1,000 Steam games. There would just be, here's some nudity, but who cares about the game, right? First Descendant is I'm so sorry, I still have not put time into it. Live server's always online. I'm a busy guy. I know what you mean. I know exactly what you mean. That's part of the reason why I haven't either, even though I've liked what I've played of the game. Yes, the models do look good. There's kind of an intriguing story, at least a little bit what I've learned in it, and the gameplay loop is solid enough where it doesn't get tedious or anything like that. It's just it's another big time investment too. But yeah. I think they're still going pretty strong, and they've released a pretty steady stream of new outfits for the lady descendants. That
there have been a few new male descendants, probably.
Yeah, and they look cool too. They look, they're super buff, strong looking dudes too. So eye candy for both. That's nobody's against that. I've never been against it. So
I'm against it, but that's me. I don't want to look at hot men.
Well,
that's not what I'm about.
Well, when I say I'm not against it, I wouldn't mind if the ladies looked as good as they did and the men were ugly, but it doesn't bother me that the guys are buff and look like models too. So, but that's another game. Like I said, I'll probably check in on every once in a while as well, see how it's going.
I'm going to put Tekken 8 here. I don't know how much of you played it versus me. Probably the best modern fighter, as opposed to like Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat. We talked about Mortal Kombat 1 before. We don't need to talk about it again. Although if we're doing dishonorable mentions, the Mortal Kombat 1 DLC Chaos Reigns would definitely go here. Dog shit story. Tekken 8, however, has a pretty good story. I think it ties up all the stuff they invested in Tekken 7. Some of their DLC undoes that. Unfortunately, their DLC practices are very bad because Bandai Namco. But mechanically, it's a very solid fighter. They have an excellent tutorial to learn all the moves, and you're not going to get high level stuff at Evo or whatever. Looks gorgeous, plays great. Tekken 8.
That's definitely the one thing about modern fighters that I think most of the big entries are showing improvement is giving you all this information, any information that you could want when you're in practice mode or training tutorials and what have you. And Tekken 8 has definitely stepped up in that regard, and I appreciate that because I've played these games since the very first Tekken, and I still reflexively, muscle memory, know the older character move sets, at least the basic ones, but it definitely helps having all these, new systems to be able to learn the newer characters. And there's some interesting ones too. And yeah, I didn't mind with the story. it's a weird critique. I know it's a story. It focuses around Jin, but my main criticism is you play too much Jin in the story. I wish
you play a lot as him. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean he's a fine enough fighter, but he's not one of my favorites.
Who started this trend? It must have been Mortal Kombat 9, right? Or the first Injustice, where you play as almost everyone on the roster during the story mode to kind of prepare you for the fight, the versus fighting, right? So Tekken 8 does that, where it gives you some time with some other characters, but other characters you get literally one very, very short fight with.
It does seem like Mortal Kombat 9 was the first one to start that trend. And even that formula can get a very, very... It's like unbalanced as far as narrative-wise goes, because you'll end up... in cases like that, characters will have to like invent reasons to fight. And it's usually like half of them seem to start just because of misunderstandings. Like, Johnny Cage and Kenshi or whoever, like run into each other and they each think the other one's a bad guy, and so a fight ensues and it's just a waste of time. So like I would like a sort of a middle ground, from having to invent ridiculous reasons to start fights with just so you can play as these niche characters, as opposed to just play as Jin the entire game. Story, it takes like 8 hours to beat.
Well, that would have to be the alternative. It's like they have a full-fledged story mode for every single character, which would be so much money and time, it wouldn't be worth it. Because people don't play these things to play single player.
Just you and I, it feels like Loki sometimes. I know it's not, but it does feel that way sometimes. But I think I put it in anywhere like somewhere over 20 hours into Tekken 8. So I mean, quite a bit, not as much as I have in previous fighters, but it's definitely the best of the current generation of the big three. That's for darn sure. So fun game. And another game I played a little bit of, and I'm sure I will play a little bit more, but it came out very late in the year and it's getting a lot of talk, is Marvel Rivals. And it is the game that proves that there is no such thing as superhero fatigue, only bad superhero movies. Because, lo and behold...
It also proves that the online hero shooter is not dead.
No, I didn't think there'd be a hero shooter that would get... And it hasn't quite gotten up to the heights of Overwatch did at its peak, but it's definitely on the right track, and it's trending that way each passing week. So, and if they keep making models that look like what they Black Widow and the Invisible Woman, then I think they're going to be doing okay. So, and it's a fun game. Like it's like First Descendants. It's not just that the female character models look nice; they're pretty to look at. It's a good fighter. It's actually pretty darn fun to play. I don't know if I've told you this, offline, but I don't think I will be getting into it quite as heavily as I invested in Overwatch in my day, because overall I think I put well over 1,000 hours into my Overwatch career, as it were. I don't see myself being able to devote that much time into Rivals, like in nowadays, but I definitely want to play it more. So it's a blast. But just don't type in Free Taiwan, because that's a no-no.
Yeah, it is. NetEase is a Chinese company, yes. I want to put, I don't know how you're going to feel about this, I want to put Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 here. Because I straight up don't think it's as good as the previous game way back on the 360 PS3.
I agree with that overall, yeah, having played the first one.
You and I played the whole co-op thing together, and I really got sick of what I call protect the bullshit missions. Of you're gonna stand here and watch as Tyranids or fucking whatever just mob a resource, and you have to just stand there like an asshole and kill 1,000,000 of them. It's like, all right, move on to the next thing you have to protect in the center. And I was like, God, that sucks in any game. I don't care what it is.
I think the reason why it's so, so apparent, happens so often in Warhammer 2 is because it's not. A lot of people equate it to Gears of War. It's not Gears of War. Gears of War was a covered shooter. Space Marine is not a covered shooter. It is a horde shooter. And the standard ground missions, I think, it's probably the developer's best way to showcase the horde. And just, you can just see it swarming over the walls or, up the battlements or what have you and whatnot. Just see the sheer number of enemies coming at you.
It's a cool visual, and it does set that tone. But did we need to do it 6 times?
It happens a lot, for sure. And it would, more of a balance, wouldn't go amiss, I think, in that sort of deal. It's, it just kind of takes a little bit more creativity, from the developer's standpoint. And they have to kind of work in conjunction with the writers as well for, have the writers come up with a plot reason, for
also they
characters taking different actions, what happened.
I never talk about it on any of our shows, but I am big into Warhammer, the universe, right? I don't play the tabletop, but I've played a lot of the other video games, and I've read a shit ton of books. So in Space Marine 2, when they're like, oh, we gotta do this, I'm like, what? That doesn't make any sense. That's not how that works. No. You can't just do Primaris Marines. No, hold on. You're breaking your own lore here. That bugs me as a big fucking nerd.
Game Workshop has definitely made some iffy decisions, and they've done some things that have received backlash from the fan base. And as someone who has just barely dipped his toes in the Warhammer 40K universe this past year, I remember a long time ago I heard someone say, or read somewhere online, that Warhammer 40K is like crack to nerds. And I never understood that until I started just going over artist renditions and pictures and like seeing like the badass armor and the designs of all the horde enemies and all the ships and I'm not going to be model collecting or anything. I don't think I'm going to get into it that much, but I can definitely see the appeal to 40K. It is an awesome grim world universe that is.
The better game is another game that came out a long time ago that you and I have been playing. We need to get back to. Inquisitor Martyr. It's the Diablo-like, but I think it's a much better in like introducing you to that world, and it just plays better.
I've been having a blast with it too, and yeah, there's a lot more codex entries. There's a lot more background lore to get into. It's one of those in our co-op game through. We haven't been stopping and smelling the roses, as it were, but in the future I'll have to do a single player and kind of comb over that more in detail, because it's remarkable how much lore there is into this universe. It's crazy.
This was invented, I believe, in England in the late 70s, the tabletop stuff, and but they cover, let's say, 15,000 years of history. So yeah, it's like Tolkien but in space. You got your elves, you got your orcs, you got your humans. It's all the same.
Yeah, there's definitely echoes of Tolkien's influence for sure, but I don't even know in his wildest imaginations he could come up for some of the designs of those armors and weapons. It's nuts. But yeah, I played the first one right after 2, and yeah, I agree. I enjoyed 1 more. I thought it had a better story, better pacing, and I thought the orcs were just a better overall main enemy to fight as well. Had a better antagonist too. So, but 2 I think was a more solid game to play. Gameplay wise is although they did reduce the number of weapons. It didn't
suck. We had fun.
Yeah, no, they did reduce the number of weapons from 2 to 4 that you could carry, which did suck. There was definitely some cutbacks, but overall, yeah, gameplay wise, it was a step up. So,
anything else?
No. Well, Amazon did release this series called Secret Level, and they have a Warhammer 1, and that's also getting a lot of buzz too. So there's been a lot of Warhammer love this past year, so it's good to see.
Let's see if Games Workshop can get their head out of their ass based on that whole female custodies bullshit they got in trouble for. It blocked me. No, I will never get over it.
As you shouldn't.
I thought of another game that does not qualify for our Game of the Year, but the Epic Mickey Rebrush, they redid it. They basically remade the game. It's not a up-res or any of that shit. Remaster. It is a remake. The problem is they didn't add any voice, so you're just stuck reading cartoon gremlins the whole time. It's like, man, how the fuck you can make a Disney Mickey game without voices? It's stupid.
That's one of the most iconic things about him is his voice. His oh.
We also didn't talk about that Elden Ring DLC, and I'll give you 1 whole minute.
I thought it started strong and it had a disappointing end. I think it exemplified a lot of the issues I have with the Elden Ring and overall Dark Souls formula of quest design, and I think we've talked about it quite a bit on this show in the past, so I won't go more into that, but yeah, it had some really fun bosses, some really cool designs, and then it had some bosses that were just straight ass, and they were terrible, and dare I say cheap from a design point. More so the last boss of the DLC. It definitely, I had the feeling that From Software and Miyazaki are just running out of ideas for bosses, because they've had hundreds in the history of the Souls franchise. And at this point, they're just kind of like, okay, he has a giant sword. He swings it down. Oh, we've done that before. What can happen next? Oh, well, how about a bunch of lasers just pop up from the ground when he swings his sword? Done. Let's do it. Let's have him grow angel wings and then send a bunch of after images at the enemy, and they also all have visual particle effects that can damage the player as well. Yeah, it's great. Love it.
This stupid ass DLC might be the most controversial thing of the year. By that I don't mean like, oh, it has, what the media wants to call controversial. I mean, I have seen about as many people praise Shadow of the Erdtree as I have seen people shit on it.
That's probably because like I said, it just feels like a culmination of all the bad things in the Souls universe, and it feels kind of like the formula is running dry at this point. It feels like they're running out of ideas. And
well, considering the thing they're releasing next is a 3-person co-op thing that does recycle assets, I would say yes.
Oh, speaking of squeezing something dry, good gracious. That looks so normified is the best word I can think of. It seems like they're just trying to mine that Elden Ring vein as much as they can until they move on. So, but the more and more news comes out about that, the less excited people are getting about it as well. So I'll be curious to see how that does. I'm sure it'll sell well, but yeah, overall I wasn't impressed with the DLC. So.
What else we got?
The remastered I played, and I actually streamed on my channel, Lollipop Chainsaw Repop, which I never played the original when it first came out, way back in the PS3, Xbox 360 era, if I'm not mistaken. And I didn't know this for like the first hour while I was playing it, and I was actually playing the original version, just the up-resed version of it. Even though the Repop edition it's like an ultimate up-res. It's not a remake like the Mickey game was. This had a very weird development cycle in that they said they were going to remake it, and then partway through said, you know what, never mind, we're just going to remaster it instead. I think they just found out it would the resources that it would have taken and the funding, they just didn't have the money to spend on a remake, so they just decided just to repackage it into a remaster, it seems like. And apparently, by the way, despite that, it did still surpass their expectations for sales. So I guess good for them. It's not Grasshopper, it's who released it. Because Grasshopper were the original ones. Oh, gosh. Can't think of it now. May think of it later. We'll be off air when I do. Yeah, I think I read they sold over 200,000 units, which they seem to be happy with. So, yeah, good for them. And they're releasing updates, mostly new costumes for Juliet. And it was a fun game. I ended up actually just playing the original up-res version because the Repop version, unfortunately, censors blood. They changed the color from red to rainbow, and I thought that was gay. Not just because of the rainbow imagery, but also the censorship aspect of it. So, but it looked fine enough in the original up-res version. So, and it was it was just nice to play just a fun, simple game that was just didn't take itself too seriously.
It is very much a throwback game to the games of that era. We talked a long time ago about stuff like Wanted Dead, which tries to be a throwback game to games of that era, but plays badly. And then like I didn't play it, but Shadows of the Dam Remastered also came out in 2024, and it's like it is. I don't want to say refreshing, but that's the closest word I can think of playing games that were just games. It's just like here's 10 hours, just go kill some zombies, look like a hot cheerleader while doing it. Fuck it, go have fun. Who cares, right? We're not trying to break the bank here.
And it's certainly encouraging when you hear that when like Repop, it does well financially, and units sold and whatnot. So, and hopefully it's kind of a sign to other developers that players just want to go back to kind of that time. We do. I mean, not that we're trying to throw everything out of modern, get rid of everything that has come with modern type gaming, but there's certain aspects we could definitely do without that we've seen in more recent games. So,
yes,
but yeah.
One last thing about Lollipop Chainsaw, I'm always going to bring this up. Co-written by James Gunn.
Might be the best thing he did, besides the first Guardians of the Galaxy.
I was going to say, I wouldn't go that far. There's at least 1.5 Guardians of the Galaxy things.
Yeah, true. And the Suicide Squad was also pretty good. Wait, was that the second one? Yeah,
the second one.
Yeah.
The game Suicide Squad bad. The Suicide Squad movie good.
Yes, yeah. Gotta clarify that. Another big remaster came out last year was the Tomb Raider 1 through 3 remastered came out. And I haven't finished them because they're really long games. And dare I say dated, too. Because, I was never really big into the Tomb Raider franchise. I've played most of them, but I wouldn't call myself a super fan by any means. And they definitely have a certain charm, but gameplay-wise, I could definitely see why Crystal Dynamics eventually went in another direction with the franchise.
I think I'm very cynical about older Tomb Raider games. My theory on why they're so beloved is not because of the games themselves. It's because they're not what Tomb Raider has become now.
That's probably true for some players. I think they're generally super fans. They grew up playing those games, the older ones, and they prefer them to the newer ones. And I could kind of see that from a tone and sort of the character of Lara Croft, because she is different in the Survivor series than what she is in the originals. And from that aspect, I prefer the older ones, but playing the older ones, they're they're a product of their time. It's one of those sort of deals. It's one of those things like these probably could serve to have a actual remake of, but they seem to sell the remasters well enough. So, and they're already, I think in a month from now, the next 3 games are also coming out remastered editions.
Yeah, the 2 worst reviewed ones of Last Revelation and Dark Angel.
Mm-hmm. I actually have Dark Angel for the PS2, but I haven't tried it out. But I've heard some interesting things. There's a lot of crazy glitches and even content in it, so look forward to getting around to that sometime.
Might as well, because we're never going to see Tomb Raider 12, the latest game. Amazon owns the rights. They're just sitting on their ass making a TV show with Sophie Turner instead. Who gives a fuck?
Don't forget that shitty Netflix animation show as well that came out.
I can't tell which one you're talking about, Stizzy. All of those Netflix animations look the exact same.
The Tomb Raider one specifically, but yeah, sure, right. They just have that one generic animation look.
Do you want to get into Rebirth?
Another game I started late in the year, but haven't gotten into it. It won a lot of awards, is Metaphor Revantasio. Now, I've only played, I would say, maybe 8 or 9 hours of this game, but so far it's got an intriguing start to the story. It has some greater mysteries and some smaller mysteries that I'm interested in finding out more about, and some of the characters that have been introduced to seem promising. So, looking forward to learning more about them. It's got promise. The gameplay it seems like each of these Atlas RPGs, they just seem to be streamlining the combat more and more, trying to make it, go as quick and snappy as they can. And this one's no exception. There's a lot less variety and versatility, in the summons and the powers you can use as compared to a Persona game. There are these beings called archetypes that are supposed to be like the Personas, but you can share them among your party members, so it's not like you can collect over, hundreds of them, like in Persona, and use them, mix and match their powers and whatnot. So, and there's...
I wonder if that's part of their Sega streamlining, because, Sega a while back announced, okay, what we're going to do, we're going to have a Persona-style game every year, we're going to have a Like a Dragon-style game every year, and some other third thing. They're just, pumping out these games, so I wonder if streamlining the battle system and summons and all that shit is part of it.
Perhaps, yeah. I hadn't thought about that. This just might be... They might have thoughts of Metaphor or a certain RPG of that style being a new franchise to deviate from the Persona series. That very well could be the case, yeah. But yeah, it's going to be a very long game. It's a JRPG. I'm expecting
Yes.
It's going to be close to 100 hours. So the time I actually got my hands on it, and with everything else going around, I just didn't have the time to invest in it and see, come to a definitive best game of the year, such and such, or, top games of the year. But it's off to a promising start, so I look forward to it. Now we can maybe get to Rebirth.
We talked about this. Oh God, I wish we had recorded, because we kept talking that we were going to do a show about Rebirth for forever. Real life got in the way, unfortunately. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is a very, 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 very good game that falls short of greatness in mostly the story. There's a little bit of bloat in the open world. I think there's too many missions where you have to go to a place to climb a tower to unlock an area to go fight a thing. It suffers from a little bit of checkboxing, not as badly as Western games, but really the meat of Rebirth is in what they decide to do with the story by making it a multiverse.
Yes, that is a popular trend in quite a few franchises these days. It's not one I ever expected to see in Final Fantasy VII. We've seen it in a Final Fantasy games before. I think 13 kind of delved into it, and the what is it, Nisidia, the fighting game? Nisidia, that's how you pronounce it. It also deals with the parallel universes and whatnot. 7 did not need that. It did not need the multiverse madness, if I may, to be introduced into it, because it already had a phenomenal story to begin with in the original. And we've talked about this ad nauseum, but I'll mention it again. It's what do gamers actually want with a remake? Do they just want a carbon copy, 1-to-1 adaptation from the original, just with prettier graphics and maybe an updated combat system, or they don't want it drastically changed? Yeah, the answer seems to change with every gamer, but in the case of Final Fantasy, they decided to go with the latter, and they've made some stupid decisions narratively, in my opinion.
You know what's astonishing about that, Stizzy? I was gonna bring up Resident Evil 4 as the closest 1-to-1 analog, even though they fucked with shit, and that did very well. Rebirth did not do very well. It did good, but not the numbers they needed it to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think narratively, what they wanted to do was to make every player happy. And it's an adage of, if you try to make everyone happy, you make no one happy. This game wasn't necessarily about shipping, but a major event occurs partway through the original Final Fantasy VII. I'll just spoil it because it's been an old ass game at this point. Sorry, everyone. Aerith dies. So, but there's this like lingering hope or whatever, and you see her ghost, in the rest of the game, and they refer back to her in the anime of Advent Children, all that shit. So in Rebirth, when they're like, okay, so what if we did kill her, but also didn't kill her, so we can keep that weird hope alive of, oh, maybe you can bring her back. And the same with Zack Fair, who died in the previous game. It's like, what if he's not dead? What if there's an alternate universe where Cloud is the one who's gone, and all the other people are gone, and Aerith's alive? And it's like, why the fuck are you trying to do this?
It's definitely it's one of those things where the multiverse obfuscates all of these narrative cornerstones that were in the original game.
Yes.
Aerith dying, Zack dying in beginning of the story. You don't learn that until later in the story, and that Cloud gets his brain messed up, and he starts he starts adopting Zack's memories and whatever, and mixing them up with his own memories and stuff like that. And it's really, really awesome. Interesting to see that him go through that and go learn, have that revelation come on him. But the multiverse it gives the hope to all these like players, like, oh yeah, Aerith could come back. Zack in this other universe, and he's with Biggs, I think. they're on their own adventures, and maybe they'll meet up, and that might be the end of the third game. They might have two separate universes, and the original.
We talked so many hours about how this has to end, but it can only end one way, back to zero, back to the way it was.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I don't want to get into the reasons here because the show's going to be 2.5 hours as is. But if it's all going to go back to the way it was, why did you change it so drastically in the second part?
I'll be really mad if it just goes. God, I'm going to be mad either way. Is the sort of where I'm at right now. Is I'm going to be mad if they change it drastically, but at this point, I think they have to. Because I might be more upset if they just, like you said, just go back to the way it was, way it ended in the original game, and then all three games are just going to feel like a waste of time to get to the same point. And it's like, well, why didn't we just adapt the original Journey, which is obviously superior from a narrative and time standpoint? And I think that's another reason why it losing sales as well, is breaking up this what used to be one game into three games. I never liked that decision. I still will never like that decision, because like Rise of the Ronin, Rebirth also suffers from a lot of bloat, and a lot of it has to do with the open world. Now, there's a lot of good things associated with the expanded areas, mostly graphically and design, in the environmental design wise, because most of them look phenomenal, and I think they do a really good job of bringing these old locations that were basically just, they were just color blocks in the original game, and bringing them to life to modern systems.
But then they need to give you something to do there, and what they have you do is like just beat up a couple of enemies, or like
Chadley's chores,
bullshit stealth bit. Yeah, chores, checklist stuff, or fucking more mini games. There's 1 million mini games in Rebirth.
There's definitely,
and they're not all just confined to the golden saucer.
Mm-hmm. No. There's mini games everywhere. There's mini games for a lot of things that don't need mini games, and I don't know. God, it's one of those things. It feels like something they just gave a section of the development team just for something for them to do. It's like, okay, how about we make a mini game of Cloud dragging a cowbell around to attract chickens? What? Like, well, we got nothing else to do, so we get on it. It's ridiculous, and I mentioned it, but Chadley is way. You talk to him way too much. He's involved in way too much of the open world stuff, and like the summons. There's a summon associated with each area that you visit, but all you're doing is just collecting artifacts and information and going to a shrine, and then Chadley just like uploads that, and you fight the summon digitally to gain it. And I thought it'd be much cooler if you could actually fight that summon in its own area, have like a special arena dedicated to fighting it in the real world, as it were. But unfortunately, they didn't do that. And yeah, it's just going around and, just going to a tower, unlocking the map, unclouding, unfogging the map, as it were, and just going from point A to point B as far as the open world. And it sucks because there's a lot of good in this game, and I think most of it is with the character work and
yes.
expanding on these already beloved characters and making them even better. It's hard to pick which one's my favorite or, like which story I like, but I was really invested in Barrett's story. I thought they did a great job of expanding on what he went through in the original game, and see his journey even through some flashbacks. I think they implement those very well too. So, and to see him and Cloud's relationship develop too, from being very antagonistic in the first game to becoming comrades in arms and gaining a lot of respect in this game was enjoyable to see. So it reminds me how much I love the characters, but it also, on the flip side, it also just reminds me just how bad they're fumbling the overall story, the big plot.
Yeah, it's again a very, very good game. Can't give like a final judgment until this is all done in 4 years. And with Square Enix's like other problems, it seems like Final Fantasy is all they have left.
And the combat, I forgot to mention, the combat's pretty much the same from the first game, which was already good as it was. So
yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, no, it's nothing really. They add some synergy abilities, allies, team members actually, teaming up and doing special moves and stuff like that. But overall, the skeleton is still the same. So, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it, is what I say. So,
unless it's the story, I guess.
Yeah. I don't. I think they're committed to their current course, unfortunately. So, we'll have to find out with not Reunion, because they've done that name before. Revelations. Who knows what it's going to be called?
Redo.
Yeah, I wish. No.
Anything else in the honorables?
No, I got 4 games that I completed, or no, 3 games, left on here, my list that I completed and I liked and enjoyed very much.
Okay. So then I'm going to take this short opportunity here to talk about how much I liked Star Wars Outlaws. No, I don't care. So I liked it. The end. I was not expecting to like it. It sold very, very badly. It's part 1 of the 2-part death of Ubisoft. But it launched broken. I didn't play it at launch, so I can't speak to how bad it was. Star Wars is in a very bad place in the public eye, and Ubisoft is in a horrendous place in the gamer eye. So I think those 2 things contributed to it. I still had a lot of fun with it. I enjoyed... I didn't feel preached to at any point or punched in the face by modernism like in Dragon Age or any of that shit. But I can't, similar to other games, I can't convince other people that they should play this, because you already know based on the property it's about and who's making it whether or not you like it. And knowing you as I do, I know you won't like it because of the Star Wars thing and the Ubisoft thing.
You sent me a photo during your playthrough that when I saw it, my brain just short-circuited because it was a factions relationship page, for lack of a better term. And it was basically, it was your reputation with all these different criminal organizations, not just settlement out in the middle of nowhere just minding their own business. But we got the Hutts, we got Red Sun, whatever it is, you got these other crime families, and you were esteemed, or whatever the very, very highest reputation with each of these. And I'm thinking, how is that even possible? That would be like if I...
took a lot of juggling on my part. That was not an easy thing to make happen. That was many hours into the game when I was almost done.
Main character has to put on a fake mustache when she goes to one faction, a wig on another.
I want to take you back in time all the way to 1997 in a deleted scene that was added into the special edition. So Greedo shows up and he's like, "Yo, Jabba," to Han Solo, and he says, "You fucked up Jabba's mission. I got to kill you." Han murders him brutally, like a brutal core murderer, by shooting first, because that's what murderers do. And then Jabba shows up and he's like, "Why the fuck did you kill my boy Greedo? And we're all gonna kill you now." Then Han is like, "Hey, whoa, hey, what if I did another mission for you?" And Jabba's like, "Yeah, okay." So it's fine for Han Solo to do it, but not for K-Vest to do that same thing. Interesting.
Loki, you should know that a lovable scoundrel is still a scoundrel. So, I mean, what can I say? But, and I think that's another thing that put off a lot of people on K-Vest is because the diminutive or derogatory name of Ma'am Solo was also making the rounds on the internet. And
yeah, oh man, the marketing for her was very, very bad because they market her as the smuggest bitch to ever smug. But having played the game, I can tell you that's all fronting. She is like a fucking nervous wreck all the time. But that's not in any of the marketing. It's just like, oh yeah, I'm going to cross my arms and look smug all the goddamn time. It's like, man, that's going to turn so many people off.
It seemed like another case of the girl boss stratagem and, putting their absolute worst face for their main character forward. And like you said, Star Wars is dead to me, pretty much. It would take a lot for them to, bring any interest for me back, but that's a different discussion. So, Outlaws had no interest for me. So,
I'm not saying everyone should play it. I'm just saying I really, really liked it way more than I thought I would. My opinion is irrelevant though because Ubisoft's going under. Too bad, so sad.
They got only themselves to blame. So. I did actually have one more honorable mention, and it's a game I'm playing currently. But another one I didn't get until very late because I was waiting for the physical edition to come out. That is Black Myth Wukong, otherwise known as the Monkey Game. And just another big release. What they sell? Something like 20 million units. It's crazy how well this game is sold. And it was one of those games that was first premiered years ago. I want to say 2018, 2019, around that time.
Quite a while, yeah.
And frankly, I didn't think it would ever come out. I thought, man, this looks way too picturesque and too good looking to ever be released. But it did come out, and it does look that damn good. It is, not to sound too gay and artsy, but it's like playing a painting. It's phenomenal how good the game looks, and it plays pretty damn well too. And it is the gameplay is inspired by the Souls games, but I was telling you this the other day. It's one of the most un-Souls-like games I've ever played because it's very forgiving. You don't lose anything when you die, unlike Dark Souls where you lose your souls, otherwise your experience. Black Myth, you don't lose experience, you don't lose resources. You lose the items that you may have, consumed in the fight, but you can just, make more or buy more or what have you, something like that. I don't think this was in the 1.0 version, but they added in maps that you can buy, and you can fast travel to any shrine from anywhere on the map that you're in. And there's some tough fights, there's some challenging ones, but nothing, too crazy. Nothing I haven't been able to handle so far. And
also, I don't know how familiar you are with the origin. It's the Chinese origin story of the universe, basically. They've told this is another one of the stories been told a lot, and it's in a lot of video games, even ones you wouldn't think about, like Enslaved Odyssey to the West on the PS3 360. I don't know if you ever played that game.
I never did, no.
Okay, well, it's the exact same story. They just change a few of the characters around. It's like there's this monkey dude, and he can do a lot of cool shit, and he fights other monsters.
I'm not too.
Wukong.
I'm not any expert on the Journey to the West story, but you're right. It does. It's pretty remarkable how many like pieces of media have been influenced by the story. I think even read somewhere like 100 years ago, like a Christian missionary actually took it back with him to whatever European country he came from, because he saw a lot of parallels between that and Christianity, and kind of like a shared sort of creationism. But that's definitely beyond the scope of my my intellect or understanding. But it's a fun game.
With it. Yeah. Dragon Ball was also very heavily influenced by that.
Yeah. Well, heck, because he rides the cloud and he has the staff that expands and detracts and whatnot, and the gameplay isn't anything revolutionary or anything like that, but it actually feels like you're playing as a very agile and strong monkey dude. And I think, I mean, that sounds like a simple thing, but it's remarkable how many games just fail to make you feel either powerful or fit what the actual characters, characteristics are. Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I don't know how that happened, but yeah, I haven't finished it. I think I'm close to about halfway through of it, but I can definitely see why it won a lot of people's Game of the Year, because I'm having quite a fun time with it. So I'm looking forward to playing more.
Alrighty. I won't, because it has a giant spider.
I haven't come across it yet. I've come across a few giant toads, but no spiders yet.
Now for the mostly best of the best, sure, with honors, whatever you want to call it. Best games of the year. The big surprise for me this year is Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. Not based on, partly based on that studio tour we saw a long time ago. And partly based on, I don't think it has the greatest opening of a game. You've only played a little bit of it, Stizzy. How far are you?
I am still in the Vatican, which is the big wide open area.
You go to 3 major wide open areas. The Vatican one is the biggest, and you spend the most time there. And I think it's a mistake, because it really slows the pace down. Once you get out of there and go to Egypt and Thailand adjacent, the game really opens up. You do still have, a lot of exploring to do, but they give you a shit ton more puzzles to do and a much more stealth and action scenes. I do still think, having completed the game, I firmly believe it would have been better in third person. We all know the reason it's not in third person, because they didn't want to invite comparisons to the Uncharted games. But considering the first 2 Uncharted games are literally just Indiana Jones movies as a game, it's like, come on, guys, they inspired you. You're not going to get flack for taking from them.
Plus, I believe it was developed by Machine Games, if I'm not mistaken, the creators of the recent Wolfenstein games, which of course are in first person, so it may just be a matter of the devs sticking in their comfort zone.
They definitely didn't stick in their writing comfort zone, because I expected, based on that studio tour and my dislike of the Wolfenstein games, to really hate the story and the characters in this, and I don't. I really like them. It's weird to say this, but it's pleasantly surprising how much I enjoyed it, because I really didn't expect to. And I don't know if that's a fault on my part of looking too much into the studio and the writer and all that sort of shit, and not just taking the game at face value. But I don't think a Game Pass game. I don't think you can afford to take any game at face value anymore.
I think you're absolutely right, and I don't think would be the fault of any potential customer to assume the worst or bad things after seeing that studio tour, because there are red flags, and we've seen in a lot of titles that a lot of that stuff is pretty decent indicators in how a final game will turn out. But I haven't beaten it, but yeah, I'm actually enjoying more and more the more and farther I get into the game, and they actually do a really good job of capturing Indy when he was in his prime. The first 3 movies, Indiana Jones, and I think that's probably the best part for me so far. And it doesn't. So far, the writing hasn't felt modern day-ish, I guess you'd say, sort of deal. Everybody feels like they fit with the time period, yes. And the best parts are when he's raiding tombs, when he's when he's collecting artifacts and you know punching out fascists. I there's a lot of little things to it that are kind of homages to the original movies that I really enjoyed that they put in there too. It seems like they actually really care about the franchise and wanted to do it justice.
I think maybe that's what's so refreshing, considering what's happened to every other franchise on Earth, including the Indiana Jones franchise in films.
Yes, yeah, we've seen the example in this very own franchise. It's crazy.
But yes, Great Circle is really good. I don't know about great, really, really good.
Terrible name, though.
Awful name. And having beaten the game, the Great Circle itself has dick fuck to do with the game.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to getting more into it, because you're right, the Vatican is kind of a slog. I think it's kind of a poor design choice on their part. I wish it was a little bit more streamlined.
It's interesting. I think it's easily the weakest part of the entire game, but is that a good thing? No, it's not a good thing. But is that a good thing? Because the game builds very well. I think that as you go further and further along, doing side missions or whatever, but the actual main story builds very well to a really good climax. It's like a film. It's like it does the rising action with the climax and then the denouement, and it works. So I don't know if having a really slow beginning I don't think it helps player count in the long run, but that's not my problem.
That's definitely encouraging to hear, because it seems like a lot of games, a lot of movies and TV shows these days do tend to drag, especially in the second act. So to hear that the game builds and gets better and better as you go, that's the way it should be, in my opinion.
Yes. Especially for a 20-hour action game, that's what you want.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So. Yeah, a good little surprise.
This may or may not be surprising to you based on whether or not you know me very well, but you do, so this isn't surprising to you. That's a weird sentence, but don't worry about it. I was pointing at you when I said that, Stizzy.
I understood everything you said there, so don't worry about it.
Life is Strange Double Exposure. This was almost Game of the Year, Stizzy. You've heard about things falling through at the 11th hour. This falls through at 11:59. It almost makes it all the way.
Oof.
But there's a last-minute thing that makes you go, damn it, you guys should not have fucking done that. Look, everything I've said about, how shit Concord is and shit Veilguard is and fucking Banishers and its race baiting and modernism and lesbian ghosts. Double Exposure has more lesbians and gays and bisexuals per capita in one game than maybe any other game I've ever played. There's a trans character that is the biggest asshole I've ever, I'm so surprised they made the transgender character an absolute dickhead. But they're characters. They're not just gay black dude. That guy has a history and a family and a depression and hopes and fears. That trans character has a past full of regrets and is really self-loathing. And that gay lesbian bartender, she's also got an interesting past. It's Double Exposure did what you're fucking supposed to do when you make character games. Give them character. It's not a huge cast, but almost all of them are completely fleshed out. And that's kind of a staple of the Life is Strange series. Also, the supernatural effects. Max can no longer rewind time, but now she can jump between universes. And you're solving this sort of murder mystery where your friend is dead in one universe, but not dead in the other one. And you're kind of traipsing back and forth to solve, rudimentary puzzles and do investigations. But partway through is when I was convinced, this is a fantastic game. There's a major twist that I don't even want to talk about here on air, but I told you off air. That just, I can't believe they did that. That blew my fucking mind that they decided to take this narrative path. And it's that the characters that are fleshed out with, actual drives and motivations and goals. And there's, betrayal and people sleeping with each other that you wouldn't think would necessarily, and it's oh wow, that person actually did that shit, and it's oh wow, you betrayed them a decade ago, no wonder they whatever to things. It's fucking dark but also hilarious. And I love Max and I love the Life is Strange series, and unfortunately this game did very badly because Square Enix they also let go of a ton of staff. They tease a sequel at the end of the game that I don't think they're getting, unfortunately. But I really love Double Exposure. I do. I'm not apologizing for that.
I'm glad for you. It's the Life is Strange franchise. It doesn't seem like it's ever been quite able to reach the peaks as the original did, as far as general popularity goes, because that was big. The very first one was a huge game, and it was back when they were still doing, when the episodic game trend was still going strong.
Yes. Well, Double Exposure is also episodic, but it's all in the same, like, fucking disc. The original Life is Strange pieced out over a year.
Yeah, and I think that kind of built to the original's growing popularity as well. Mm-hmm. And I played the first one. I enjoyed it. I didn't like it nearly as much as you did, because there's a lot of characters that I thought were just way too postmodern and nihilistic, and just some raging feminist in there too. And it's just, but they do give them very, very deep backgrounds for the most part. And while you may pull your hair out at some of the decisions that they make, or that the game kind of feels like forces you to make at times, but yeah, I haven't gotten back to the Life is Strange since the first one, so it's just one of those, like, not exactly my cup of tea, but I can see why people are so into it.
It's the kind of choice game where you agonize over a choice not because of what it means for you, but what the other people in the game will say about you because you chose that. It's like very on the nose of, like, I need this information to help me solve the murder case. To do that, I'm going to betray you in front of your face. And the person you're betraying, like, conveys very well. It's like, wow, you're an asshole for doing this, and you feel like an asshole, but you need this information. You know what I mean? So it's a game where there are no, like, lesser of two evils or whatever.
That's a very, very strong part of writing, and a very intriguing aspect of it is writing the human heart in conflict with itself.
Yes.
A lot of authors like that phrase, and it's true. It's when done well, it can be very, very entertaining, and especially a choice-driven game like that. If it can make you stop and think about what you think should be the right choice, or you're kind of going back and forth, then yeah, I think it's done its very good job. So. It's good to know.
You want to talk about UO?
Yes, yeah. I played a game. It's not choice driven or anything, but it was a surprise for me as well, because I don't play, or haven't played, a whole lot of games from the studio, although I've heard good things. Unicorn Overlord, which came out really early last year, January, February, around that time too. And it's a strategy game, but it's pretty unique. It's or at least it's not a type of game I don't think I've played. It's that I'm not familiar with. It's essentially you set your formations, your battle formations, with different party members, and they have different classes and whatnot, and they have different strengths and weaknesses, and you try to balance them out and create the best overall teams for certain situations. And then you go to an overworld map, and then battle ensues, and you see the enemy little avatars moving on the map, and you confront them, and the characters will just autoplay. They'll fight on their own without any sort of input with you. And that kind of surprised me when I first saw it, because I thought it was more like a turn-based sort of situation. But this ended up actually being really enjoyable. And I had a lot of fun just trying to find the best team compositions. Not so much min-maxing, because you can sort of get paralysis by analysis if you kind of get too deeply into that. But it's a blast to recruit characters, and especially for a new class that you don't have, and then trying to team them up with other classes that may be lacking in a certain area, and creating the best overall team and army that you can. And sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, I was saying my closest analogy to this would be like the. Oh, I'm so mad. I'm blanking on the name right now. The very popular strategy game from Nintendo.
A Fire Emblem?
Fire Emblem. How akin to like Fire Emblem Three Houses is it? Because you say strategy game, and that's the kind of thing I think about.
It's very It is very similar in that the game calculates as it's going on, like your certain percentage of like how much of your attack will hit or how much damage it'll do when you're preparing to fight a certain unit. And although Fire Emblem has a little bit more control to the player as far as like specific battle command inputs, but the thing with Unicorn Overlord is you can sorry, I'm blanking. You can customize what I would call, they were called gambits in Final Fantasy 12. Basically, they're like in battle strategy that they go down. Like there's certain spells that they prioritize, and like
if this happens, then do this.
Yes, yeah. There's different options for different contingencies and whatnot. Like if you have an ally that goes below half their health, that you use a healing spell or what have you, and you could just like. You can go nuts with like you can basically account for any sort of contingency that you can possibly think of, and there's some like, and that's why even though it's not as hands-on as a lot of RPGs I've played, it's still, you're having to adapt to like every single situation in battle, and especially if you run into a whole new type of enemy and you gotta work on the fly, like, okay, what unit should I send after them to do the most damage or what have you. So there's it makes you feel like you're in command of an army, and it's got,
you are the titular unicorn.
Yeah, yes, yeah. I think the unicorn's the god in the universe, actually.
Okay.
But and I don't aspire to be that. Or I don't say I'm that, but it is really, really enjoyable. All the control that it gives you, and it's got a really beautiful aesthetic. I love the art style. It's been the common one for the Vanillaware games, the sort of the 2D animated look, and it's another game that just kind of, it looks like an anime painting. It's awesome, and it's got some big titty elf waifus in it that you can. It's got
the most important thing.
Yes, yeah, but a lot of the characters are really intriguing. It's got a ton of them. So again, like Rise of the Ronin and other games we've referenced, they don't always get the time you kind of wish they would, but and it's got a pretty basic, but it's got it's a story you don't see a lot of these days. It's the classic tale of the hero's journey, and he's overcoming the great evil, and at the end, goodness triumphs, spoiler, and the kingdom is saved. And it's just like, it was, again, it's refreshing to kind of play that kind of story again. And it's I had a blast with it, and I'm kind of going the wrong way. I'm thinking about going backwards in the Vanillaware's
well, I played
games.
What's that, the other damn strategy game they made with the mechs?
13 Sentinels.
13 Sentinels. That's really fucking good. 100%ed it even, and the strategy aspect is not even like the good part of the game, and it's a fraction of the visual novel part of the game. The visual novel is fantastic. I wouldn't put it as high as like Steins Gate or the Virtue's Last Reward or those games, but it's up there. I really like the story they told in that game.
I got that one too, and I got Dragon's Crown, and I got Odin's Sphere, I think it's called. I have several on my hard drive. I just got to get to them.
I know Odin's Sphere is famous for being very difficult, and I know one thing about Dragon's Crown, and by that I mean two things. They're both on the sorceress character.
Yeah, they whatever their art designers are doing, I say keep at it. Just keep doing what you're doing. Just don't change very much.
Knowing me as you do, would you recommend I play Unicorn Overlord?
I think you would enjoy it, but as we are fond of speaking of with Japanese RPGs, it's lengthy. It's about 100-hour game. So it's a big time investment, but I would recommend it. Yeah.
Speaking of hot women,
Yeah.
I got another fucking controversial game, but only if you're like a journalist. If you're like someone who enjoys video games, it's not controversial at all. Stellar Blade. I'm gonna let you talk about this one more actually, but whatever about you think about the character designer and all that shit and the voice work, like set aside the main character for a second. It's a gorgeous game with incredible enemy design and great music, and it fucking is fun to play. That's what you want from a fucking action game.
This is Shift's first console game, and I was kind of, because they just make mobile games as far as I know before this.
Yes,
so
they're a Korean developer who has only made mobile games up until this point.
Yeah, so I was wondering as well how they were going to, how they're going to do with this first game, and I think they knocked it out of the park. And it's not a perfect game by any means. It takes a lot, and I mean a lot, of inspiration from Nier Automata. And I'm not just talking about the reception that the main character design has gotten as well. It's also got pretty similar story beats to Automata.
Yes.
So I would like them if they make a Stellar Blade 2 to, kind of expand upon that on their own world. And I mean, it's one thing to be influenced obviously by Nier in particular. It's a great game, but maybe just kind of make their own path forward if they do make a sequel. But yeah, it's a great game for all the points you brought up. It's great to look at, great designs. Yeah.
If I had to pick negatives, it is kind of a learning curve in terms of the combat, because it's not Souls-like. It's like Souls-light, kind of.
Yeah, sort of adjacent, yeah.
Yeah, I think that too much emphasis initially in the early game is put on parrying. What you really should be doing is dodging. Once I personally overcame that, I was like, I can't get the fucking parry timing down. And so I said, fuck it, I'm going to dodge instead, because you have no stamina meter. So I'm just going to dodge everything. And then it flowed way better for me personally.
I think that speaks to the versatility, because I actually ended up parrying more than dodging in my experience. But I did a mix of both. There are certain attacks, especially area of effect attacks, that are it's a much better strategy to dodge out of the way instead of parrying, because you may not even be able to certain attacks. So I think it struck up a good balance, because most Souls games or Souls-like games just emphasize one or the other. You're either parrying or you're dodging. Like Black Myth Wukong, you're just dodging in that game. Whereas Stellar Blade, you can parry and dodge. And there are, I think overall, mechanically, it's pretty sound. It's pretty tight. It's pretty good. There was
except jumping. There are a lot of times in Stellar Blade where you need to jump, and she don't fucking jump where you want her to.
Yeah, that's definitely something they need to be workshopping in the future, because the worst for me was when you would jump onto a rope and she would have to swing back and forth to get to another area, and you would jump and she would just go completely at a different angle, and you're like, what the hell are you doing? Come on. But yeah, other than I was specifically referring more to the combat, but yeah, you're right. Platforming is a little spotty, that's for sure. And
I definitely died more to falls than I did in the enemy.
Yeah. And it definitely, as far as story stuff and in the world and lore and all that jazz, it's definitely got some interesting points. Like I said earlier, it shares a lot of the same beats as Nier Automata. It's not quite as strong as a story as that one. There are certain plot holes that I think are intentional, but other ones I think just flat out don't get explained very well, or kind of glossed over.
This isn't sounding. I don't mean this to be a negative on the game, but I genuinely think if the protagonist did not look as she does with the many varied outfits that she has, this game would have gone under a lot of people's radar. this would not have been nearly talked about as much. But Koreans don't have the same proclivities that we do here in the West. People all year long were putting like characters from Star Wars Outlaws or Concord or Veilguard up against Stellar Blade. And it's like, look at Stellar Blade, all these gorgeous fucking people we can make, but over here in the West we choose not to. And it's like, yes, and I mean, I don't think, if you want to say, well, there's an agenda of Western studios to make females uglier, we can have that conversation, but that doesn't automatically make Stellar Blade a better game. You know what I mean?
I get you exactly. Eve's design definitely does a lot of load bearing as far as the marketing for this game went.
Yes.
In the pre-release, because it caught a lot of eyes, both approving and disapproving. And if she had not had such a memorable or distinguished looking design, then I'd like to think, well, it would have relied more on word of mouth, and I think it did. I think word of mouth did play a factor, because when people got their hands on the demo, they saw that it wasn't just a pretty character that you're controlling. It's actually a pretty damn good fighter, a third-person action game that you're playing here too. And it's not a carbon copy of Souls or even Nier or anything like that. It is its own thing, and it does take inspiration from those. But you definitely need both, in my opinion. You need, the first thing you see is the design. You want your characters to stand out. Whether that's just having them be attractive, or having their design say something about them. And not to go on too much of a tangent, but that was another issue with Concord too. It's like the designs, not only were they ugly, they also didn't tell you anything about the character. Like, it's just, who is this character? Like, what role are they? Are they a healer? Are they an attacker? With Eve's, you see that, yes, she's very attractive. She's inhumanly so, and that's because she's an android, even though her model is based off a human, a real female. And her outfits also, a lot of them do reflect them. Some of them are just nice eye candy, which we appreciate. And this game's gotten a lot of the post-dev cycle too. They've doing quite a few events and adding costumes and collaboration. Yeah. And it's great to see the support that the game has received, because
and is also by all metrics that Shift Up and Sony is releasing a huge success. They keep giving their employees like bonuses and shit. They just bought them all PS5 Pros. They just had Christmas DLC and all this shit. Like, they're still doing it. Fucking obviously a sequel would be greenlit.
It'd be very surprising if it didn't go forward with a sequel. And it's nice to hear a studio rewarding its dev teams for success, especially in a year like 2024, where there were something like 17,000 layoffs in the game industry. Yeah. It's crazy. So it's nice to hear the other side.
Like, that's sad, but that's due to them putting out shit games that gamers didn't want to buy.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not defending it by any means. I'm saying, like, you make a good game, gamers want, it sells well, and this is what happens.
Yes,
you get rewarded for it.
It's just a simple formula.
Yeah.
I said this about Marvel Rivals, but part of the success of Stellar Blade is she looks cool and she does cool shit. You need both to succeed. You need to have a character player's control that looks cool, and they need to do cool things. You have that, you got it made. They'll just throw fucking money at you.
And Eve's an endearing character too. Like, you play as her.
Yes.
She's also, she's not insufferable. It's like, when you playing as her, I'm not thinking, God, I can't stand her. I just, like, she's so annoying, or she's so arrogant, or what have you. So unfortunately, a lot of common characteristics in a lot of new female main characters these days. It's like, she struggles, she gets her ass kicked, she is not, she's ignorant about certain subjects. She's an android from outer space coming to Earth. She doesn't know very, very much, and it's, some of the other characters, they're a little paper thin, but a few of them, do get some time to shine. The ending, or endings, I should say, kind of, I don't know, fell flat a little bit, or there's a lot of questions, and I'm still not even sure exactly which one's going to be canon if they ever make a sequel, because I don't think they're going to make two divergent timelines to accommodate, or three, I should say, to accommodate for all the endings. So they'll have to pick one. I have an idea of what it might be, but we'll have to wait and see. They definitely, I think they should take the next game, if it comes out, to have the opportunity to expand more and more on the wars in the past and what led to the humanity dying out, or damn near dying out.
And you can still put Eve in those stories.
Yes, yeah, very easily. So I'm looking forward to that. And it, like I said, it's not a perfect game, but it was. I enjoyed it well enough to be my GOTY. I kind of went back and forth between this and Unicorn Overlord, and I'm still sort of like 1A, 1B in that. Sure. But overall, I think Stellar Blade is just, it takes it for me. Edges it out just a little bit. So,
my personal pick is something we've already talked about at length. Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth. We did a whole show dedicated entirely to it a couple episodes ago, like 2 or 3 episodes ago of this podcast here. We called it A Little Less Conversation based on the Elvis song, because there's a lot of Elvis references in Infinite Wealth. I recently replayed it again last month to confirm to myself that yes, it is. I understand the bloat as it is. I understand the inconsistent tone. And the story does kind of drag of which criminal organization you're following along to the end. But it's got 2 things that you need for me to be Game of the Year. I need to care, and it needs to be fun. I care a lot about all the stuff Ichiban and his friends go through, and I definitely care a lot about all the stuff Kiryu and his friends go through. And turn-based RPGs are my fucking Jenga jam, man. I love me some turn-based JRPGs. So, the 150 hours it takes to beat this thing, and all the silly side activities, and all the fun shit, but, the real heart and soul of the main story and all this stuff. I can't say enough good things about it. I fucking love Infinite Wealth.
It's definitely in my top 5, for sure. I enjoyed the shit out of it myself. It's fantastic. It wasn't quite as good as the 7th game, when you're first introduced to Ichiban, and it's the first time that
because that I think is more important of a game, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, in terms of the story of the overall Yakuza Like a Dragon series.
Definitely, and the story is a little bit more focused in the 7th game, even though, traditionally with Yakuza games, you go on some side paths and quests and a lot of tangents in it. So, but
this is not a problem, but I'm using the word problem. The problem with Yakuza 7 is that the final boss is almost the fucking president of Japan. So I don't know how much further you can get.
Yeah, and he wasn't even like the final fight, as it were.
Right.
He was just the main antagonist. And the final fight was, it was kind of one of those Japanese RPG tropes where,
just some guy.
Yeah, just some guy at the end, or, some guy behind the scenes just shows up and he's the real final boss. So it did stumble there, that's for sure. But Infinite Wealth, I enjoyed it for a lot of the reasons that you did as well. And like we talked about in our previous episode, and probably repeating myself because I haven't heard that episode in a while, but for me, The Man Who Erased His Name, which was, I believe, my 2023 Game of the Year, I think that was a perfect ending to Kiryu's story. I'm not going to say no to more Kiryu, because he's easily turning into one of my favorite video game characters of all time. I think he's fantastic. But I just feel like the way they introduced him back into the story of Infinite Wealth was a tad contrived. Especially when it comes to how he contracts cancer, and just like how they implement.
Yes, we talked about that.
Yeah, how they implement in the story, and he goes back to Japan, and it's just kind of like just him going down memory lane sort of deal, and I just feel like the plot sort of flounders when it comes to that, but there's definitely some highlights to Kiryu, and Ichiban's side is definitely definitely the best part, in my opinion, still. And the combat's better than it was in 7, which is you always like to see. It's still turn-based, but I just just being able to move was such a nice little addition. I just like just being able to position yourself, and so you could knock enemies into other enemies or into cars or what have you. It's simple. It was a simple addition, but it created a lot more layers to the strategy and the fighting. So I could have easily seen it being the best of, but yeah, it was just mostly story things for me that kind of made it from taking the top spot.
We mentioned that in our show about it. The pacing is a little suspect at times, and sometimes. Well, I think largely that is to the dual protagonist thing, which I do not think will happen in the next game. But that's a ways off because Ryuga Toku, even though Sega is mandated them to pump out a game every year, they're working on other stuff. They're about to come out next month, as of this recording, with what's it actually called? It's not Pirate Yakuza.
It's like a pirate.
Like a pirate.
And then I forget what the subtitle is. I should know because I see a tweet from them every day about it. But yeah, Like a Pirate, I think is the main title of it.
It stars a side character from the main games who loses his memory and decides to become a pirate. I was like, okay, sure, why the fuck not? Why the fuck not? They can do whatever. We joked off air, like, the next game is going to be Kiryu Goes to Space. Why fucking not?
I did hear a rumor that Like a Pirate was originally supposed to be a game about Kiryu deep sea tuna, tuna fishing.
Deep sea fishing, yes.
Which you do kind of see that, I believe, in the 6th game. There is the mini game where he dives, fish dives, whatever they call it.
Yes.
And so I thought, yeah, that definitely seems like something they originally thought of. But the pirate thing is, it seems like more wacky good times, and I'm all for it.
I'm not saying RGG can do no wrong, because, Lost Judgment was a bit of a step down from Judgment, etc. But even the games that are the weakest, like that and 3 and Yakuza 5, it's like, they're still really fucking good.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I've yet to play a bad game from RGG. And with them working on the new Virtual Fighter and what's basically a Yakuza prequel, Project Century, it's like, I'm only seeing good things from them. I trust them the most now. If it can be said, I trust any game studio.
For sure, and they've definitely proven that they're not a one-trick pony kind of studio either.
Yes.
The Virtual Fighter seems interesting. There was a tech demo, and I'm probably going off on a tangent here, but it definitely looks promising. And yeah, that Project Century as well too it looks much bloodier than typical Yakuza games. But although Yakuza games can get pretty visceral too and violent for sure.
Yeah, but nobody ever dies.
Right. That would be interesting twist if you could actually kill in this new game. So we'll see. Yeah, to use a strained baseball analogy, not every one of their games is a home run, but at least they're getting hits. They're keeping the runners moving, and the fact that they pump these games out so quickly, and they're, like you said, they're quality games, and a time in the industry where studios are taking 4 or 5 plus years to develop these
Dude, Veilguard
games.
took 10.
Yeah, God. Yeah, I know that wasn't 10. It wasn't 10 years totally of development. There was a lot of ups and downs on that
yes.
Can't get into now. But it's definitely the quality of the games that they're able to produce and the amount of time they're able to get them out there, I think cements them as one of the better studios working to this day.
Well, if we forgot any game, it was worth forgetting. No, there's actually a shitload of stuff I didn't forget. It's like it's over there on my shelf. I just haven't played it. It's like it was a busy year. It was a very bad year, but it was a busy year. By the way, all that stuff on my shelf is from not America. So
I'm the same way. I was talking about this to you last night. There were some good games this year, but overall it was weaker, and so I took the time to play a lot of older games this past year as well, and I still am. that's kind of the good thing when one of the silver linings when the quality of the AAA industry takes a down dip, you can sort of go back to those older titles that you couldn't get around to or didn't have the money to get back in the day, and you can possibly find a whole new game or franchise that becomes one of your favorites. So,
I gotta be honest. Looking forward, 2025 for games does not look much better.
Yeah, I was just gonna talk about maybe a preview. I don't have a list on hand, but I'm thinking the same thing.
Well,
yeah.
Dynasty Warriors Origins comes out next week as of this. Like a pirate, obviously, but then Ubisoft's last game, Assassin's Creed Shadows.
That could be the death knell, unfortunately, for Ubisoft.
Yeah. R.I.P. You did it to yourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Can't be too sorry for them, that's for sure.
We're not good at predicting the future. Look how badly we botched the past talking this show. Any final thoughts here, Stizzy, before we wrap up this year in review?
Just that it was, touched on this, but it was not the strongest of years. I don't know. I could say right now is the weakest of years. It's, that's kind of a subjective thing. But there were a lot of ups and downs, mostly downs for the industry as a whole. A lot of studio closures, a lot of layoffs, a lot of questionable business decisions, mostly on Sony's part.
I would say bad business decisions, but yes.
Yeah, for sure. And 2025 and 26, because these issues aren't going to resolve themselves overnight or even in a few years. And 25, we will see a lot of these bad decisions come home to roost and further releases. So, and it's up to the individual studios and the companies to decide what direction they want to go in. Do they want to push their own agenda and their own vision and what they think gamers want, or will they actually make a game that'll appeal to gamers? Not in, like you said, try not to appeal to everybody, but just make a fun game. Just make a fun game. Don't try to preach to everybody with every title that you make and try to make them feel guilty and just, feel bad about who they are. It's just like, just make a fun game. Make an entertaining character, make with a good character design, interesting premise. And not everybody's going to love it. You can't appeal to everybody, but don't spend as much money on games too. That'd be another.
That's probably the number one priority.
Yeah, just these bloated budgets for these games have got to come down too. That's killing a lot of these studios as well.
Yes.
So, but we'll definitely see. We'll see. It, like I said, won't be resolved in the next year, maybe in the next 2 years, but it'll be. I'm interested to see what storylines we will see coming in 2025.
Thank you so much for listening to this extra long year in 2024 review. Stizzy, plug your stuff.
I have a YouTube channel, which I haven't uploaded anything in a couple months. I've been really bad. Well, I've been playing games, but it's
not as bad as this podcast, so it's fine.
No, but it is just simply called Joe Stizzy. And I upload Let's Play playthroughs there, and they're pretty much blind, for the most part. There's if I play a demo for a game sometimes, but yeah, they're all blind games I haven't played, and they may not all be current games, but it's games I haven't played, but that I'm interested in, and I think my next one may be the RoboCop game, because after you play it, I'm kind of interested in checking it out as well. As far as any new titles, I'm not sure. Maybe like a pirate, but that's going to be a really long one, so we'll have to see about that one. So, but I'll try to upload more here in the upcoming weeks.
And if they were so inclined to find you on Twitter/X, where could they do that?
My Twitter handle is the Joe Stizzy, because Joe Stizzy was taken. probably by me, and I just forgot my password. But
that happens.
Yeah, I'm on there semi-frequently. I go through my ups and downs, and I'm not on there every day like you are, Loki.
I am on 40 times a day. That's correct. I'm on Twitter at Loki Jarson, just like everywhere else. If you see a Loki Jarson in the world, it's me. Trust me.
There's no other. That's for sure.
No, I made sure of that, in fact, a long time ago. I killed the last one. There can be only one.
Or, like Jet Li's the one.
Thank you for listening. Have a nice rest of your time that you listen to this.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.